Hey guys, welcome to session number 9 of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Let's dive in. One man with one microphone and a Beavis and Butthead card collection. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Now, in today's session, I'm going to be covering the simple idea of finding your niche, or if you're some parts of the world, niche. Now, the reason I'm covering this is because it's quite an interesting one. Obviously, I kind of get asked this question again. How do I find the sweet spot? The place where magic happens for me. Not like that. And it's really interesting, this, because finding your niche isn't a case of finding the bit that has the lowest competition, or necessarily even finding the thing that you enjoy the most, or necessarily finding the thing that you are the best at. Now let me get into that, because when I started out, I always wanted to be a film composer like Danny Elfman. That was my main game. My main aim was to be scoring films, big features, and I obviously endeavoured to do that for many years, and it's not until I got into trailer music where I was like, oh, actually this kind of ticks my boxes. Now this is the wonderful thing about it, was I wanted to get into film composition. And along the way, it's like I had the film composition as my end goal, right? This big mountain in the distance where I was like, yep, I will be stood there next to Danny Elfman in the great Film Composer Hall of Fame, me, good old Danny, and John down there, Barry and Williams, just chilling out and talking about, cool stuff. So that was my mountain in the distance, hanging out with the greats. And along the way you kind of go, okay, well, how do I get from here to there? And you see this vast landscape of things and obstacles to overcome. So you think, okay, what's my first step? My first step is obviously to try and get some money in the door, so that I can continue my endeavours. Now, some of you may know that obviously I had a side job, or I guess it was my main job actually, because it was the thing that was bringing the money, of teaching music. So whilst I was doing that, I was focusing on getting other avenues going. So I sort of went into corporate film, which, any of you who do it, I take my hat off to you. It's incredibly tedious and difficult, because you're endlessly juggling sort of the client's desire for originality with the client's actual desire for something really remarkably boring. And obviously I dabbled in advertising, which actually, I still do occasionally, and I did that for many years, and I did dance work, installation work, all sorts of avenues of composition, and this is the wonderful thing about finding your niche, is sometimes you just don't know where it is. And this is the wonderful thing. I didn't even realise trailer music was a thing. I'm along with the vast majority of people in the world who thought that trailer music was just stuff from the film, even though obviously, being a big fan of film scores, I never recognised the music from the film score in the trailers, but I didn't make that connection in my mind, which is almost laughable. But it's the wonderful thing about a film trailer. It kind of whisks you away, magical. It's like this lovely romance going on between you and the trailer, isn't it? It's like, come into my beautiful world, enjoy me, love me, and then buy the film. I never sort of made that connection. So along the way, I was dabbling in all these other things, constantly kind of searching for a way to become a film composer. Remember, this was my big goal. And along the way, I did these corporate films, which were great because it was kind of like first ventures in dealing with clients. And I did advertising, which was my first venture in consistent failure, as it were. With advertising, you're more often than not, unless you're a select few, you're pitching to do tracks for free, and you're not actually getting paid up front. You're getting paid with the promise that you're going to get the big bucks at the end. So I did hundreds and hundreds of advert pitches. Admittedly, I'm not saying the quality of my work was any good, but I learnt a lot, and it was a steep learning curve for me. Still thinking, I'm going to be a film composer at the end of this. I'm going to be a film composer. So whilst I was doing the advertising, I was studying film scores and trying to improve my production craft. And so, I have to apologise if this is quite a rambling way of getting to finding your niche, but it's really important, because the thing that was important here was the play aspect. Because I had the money issues were taken off my shoulders because of my teaching, I had the opportunity to kind of try everything. Like I said, from corporate films to dance to... Well, I wasn't actually dancing, just in case I was writing music for dance. And writing music for choir and all sorts. I had all these lovely adventures in the world of writing music, and what it kind of gradually revealed to me was the things that I actually enjoyed. It's kind of like when I used to be in a band. It took me all those years of being in a band to realise I didn't actually enjoy being in a band. I enjoyed writing music, and that was the thing. Writing music was the thing. So I was like, okay, let's write music, and then I do all these other things, and it was just wonderful to be able to play so much. And sometimes I was lucky with the corporates that they would give me a budget for recording, and then that would sort of, oh wait a second, I can get real players in here. I'd got a trumpet player to come and do some spaghetti western-esque stuff for an Adidas advert, which I didn't get in the end. Obviously I've got my friend Tim, who features heavily in so much of my stuff still as a cellist. Got some other friends playing clarinet and viola, all sorts of thing. Again, I was finding my way. Do I enjoy it? I found out that actually I don't really enjoy the recording stuff. I'm not that kind of technical minded, in the sense that I sit there and enjoy, thinking about the mic distance and mic placement and acoustics and all that stuff. And a 2-channel mixer still confuses me, so let alone a humongous mixing desk. So I'm quite happy when we do recording stuff to sit back and let the masters do their work. So I was playing in all these areas, exploring what it was that I was enjoying. And that's the important part here of the story, is to focus on what it is you enjoy. Because at the end of the day, if you're chasing money, you're going to get the money eventually. Well, maybe, if you persevere. And you're going to realise, oh, actually, I'm being paid to do something I don't enjoy, which sucks, And a lot of you are probably already doing that anyway, or at least, a certain level of unenjoyment. So be mindful of not chasing other people's goals. And the reason I say that is how it ties in with focus on your enjoyment. If you want to sound like those epic, amazing cues that Audio Machine release, and you enjoy doing that, do it. Go for it, Find out what it is about that epic sound that you enjoy. Find out what it is about that whole process that you enjoy. And this was the wonderful thing. I stumbled on trailer music. I had a brief stint writing for Pusher, and it was a humongous learning curve for me. I'd never done trailer music before. I'd done some library work, which again, this was another thing, writing for libraries. That was one of the things I realised I enjoy. Writing for libraries was, you can just write stuff that you like, and just a library buys it from you. Amazing. So I'd done some... they were essentially trailer tracks, kind of guitar-based trailer tracks for a library, but it was more focused on TV promos. So in my mind, it wasn't sort of trailers; it was still kind of TV advertising. And then, obviously, a Pusher got involved and was like, "Hey, why don't you try writing for us?" So I wrote for them and had some success, but mostly it highlighted to me how far behind I was on things like mixing and mastering and production for those high-end trailer things. And the wonderful thing there was, like I said, I didn't realise what trailer music was, really. I knew obviously there was music on trailers, but I didn't realise it was a thing. All of a sudden, this company Pusher got in touch with me, and it was like, whoa, there's like a whole world of people who just write music for film trailers. This seems pretty cool. And actually the second trailer I pitched on was the Avengers The first one, what's it called? Oh, shame on me. Well, it will come to me just as I stop recording this, I'm sure. So that was a huge deal for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I've gone from writing library music and corporate stuff and the odd advertising cue here to suddenly writing stuff that's associated with Hollywood films. I felt like I'd suddenly reached that pinnacle that I was aiming for, that kind of film composer, and actually, was it my third? Might have been my first, actually. The first one was a trailerized version of Danny Elfman's Men in Black theme for Men in Black 3, which I did land a cue on, which was huge for me, because obviously Danny Elfman was the reason I was in film scoring. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm getting to work with Danny Elfman's music on a film that Danny Elfman scored. It was a true fanboy moment for me. And the great thing there was highlighting that maybe it wasn't actually the film scoring that I wanted. It was maybe the association with the films, the idea that I was part and parcel of this wonderful, magical world. I'm still in awe of the first few times I went to the cinema to see films like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves or Jurassic Park. As a kid back then, that was big. That was like, or GoldenEye, the swan dive off the dam. Those moments in cinema were magical, and that's what trailer music started to become for me, this magical world. Now, let me take a few steps back from there. So I've just got to trailer music. So I want to remind you of my main aim, which was features. Now, at some point, I had been hired to do some feature film work, and I have had a huge mixed response, not in my way, yes, in the music I produced, but also in my experience of it. Huge mixed response as to how much I actually enjoyed doing it. Now, I don't want to put anyone off, but my experience was that, it was lots and lots of work, and lots of changes, and I didn't really enjoy the process. And I thought, well, if I don't really enjoy the process here, when I've got a small budget film with only like the director to answer to, what's it going to be like as I go up the chain and I've got a bigger team of producers to answer to, etc., etc. And it was really interesting for me, because I suddenly that mountain in the distance of being a film composer kind of disappeared. It didn't disappear, it was still there, but I thought, maybe I don't want to go to that mountain. Maybe I don't want to be a film composer. Maybe that's not my niche. That's not the thing I enjoy. And the reason I'm in this isn't to write film music. The reason I'm in this is to write something else. And at that point, I didn't know. And there were a few months of floundering where I thought, okay, maybe it's advertising. But those of you who've done advertising work, you'll understand my frustrations when you talk about, the client calls, conference client calls as well, and the feedback you get from clients and the constant amends, because the advert's always changing, the music always has to change with it, and obviously each person in the room needs to have an opinion about what you're doing as a musician, as a composer, and it was very challenging. So I thought, I floundered for a while. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew I still wanted to write music for a living, but it just wasn't doing it for me. I was kind of a bit tired of writing the same old uplifting advertising tracks. And feature film, although you have a certain amount of freedom to go crazy, as it were, the format wouldn't allow that in such a way. I liked the idea of sort of like Danny Elfman carrying a motif through a film and orchestrating it differently, so that you've actually got one idea that carries through a whole film. But that's dependent on the director. You're not unless you get a really lovely relationship with a director, it's his vision or her vision, so you need to be mindful of that, and you have to really drop your ego hugely with that stuff. In fact, actually any music writing for media, I think your ego has to be aware that it's going to take an absolute beating, which is good, because the ego needs to be kept in check. So yeah, let me fast forward back. So I'd been floundering a while, not sure, I didn't really want to be a film composer anymore as such, okay, maybe I do advertising, I'm enjoying it, and then I did some work with Pusher, and I found that I enjoyed it, but I just felt so out of my depth, like hugely out of my depth. And then that work kind of died off because I wasn't winning many jobs, and frankly, my work wasn't great then. And then it wasn't until Vic at Elephant Music, throws me a sort of life ring. Life ring. What are they called? The floaty rings that you throw when you're a lifeguard. It's amazing. I'm going to blame having a very, very young baby for my poor memory, but that's always been the case, really. Anyway, so he said to me, we're going to start producing some trailer stuff, and he said, we're going to do this sort of dark sound design. Are you in? And obviously I was like, yeah, I'm in. That sounds amazing. And it was kind of life-changing, really, because all of a sudden I wasn't thinking about themes. All of a sudden I wasn't thinking about keeping the music uplifting or hopeful. The music could be weird, and it could break rules. Obviously trailer music has its own rules, but it didn't have to stick to a visual format. I mean, it does in the end, but when you're writing it, you can get really weird, and you can make sounds using anything you want. It doesn't have to be a piano. It doesn't have to be a cello. It doesn't have to be anything. You can go and slam your toilet seat down and record it and turn that into a hit, and all of a sudden you're making music from everything around you. And it was then that I realised, this is the stuff I love. I love the freedom to make whatever sounds I want, kind of whenever it pleases me. And and I'm talking about the ego there, but that's the realisation for me, was actually the ability to get a little bit weird when I wanted to. And yes, there is that freedom in a lot of things like dance and some film scores, but I didn't have to worry about anything, really. And those first few tracks I did for Vic, that was his album 22,000 AD for Elephant Music. Those first couple of tracks I did for that, they weren't great. I was on there with other composers. What were their names? Thomas Vaux, Greg Dombrowski. Sorry if I said your names wrong, guys. And Vic sent me their music, and they'd been doing trailer music for a while, and I was thinking, gosh, these guys are amazing. They are they were getting these huge hits. They were doing these huge, crazy rises. It was like another world to me. It was like someone had opened up like a wonderful cupboard of toy sounds that I'd never really explored. Not since my days at university, when I was kind of free to explore anything I wanted. And that was the interesting thing. At uni, it was kind of like, hey, just get weird, make some noise. And you could just do whatever you wanted, For instance, one of my fellow students at university, his piece was a bow hung from string being blown by a fan, which I know that's it's art installation, and that was his jam. But we were all dealing with music, and he was a big fan of John Cage, obviously. And that was the thing I loved, just being able to get weird, and also being able to kind of go, maybe actually today I want to write a piece that explores contrapuntal writing, and to be able to kind of straddle the many genres. And that is where trailer music did it for me. I could straddle all these... I'm saying straddling. Yeah, I don't mean it like that, guys, come on. I could straddle all these genres of music and still be a trailer composer. I could make sound design, and then the next day do solo piano works, the next day do a string quartet, the next day do a full orchestra. I could do everything I wanted to, and anything, and still be in a niche, still have a role. I could be a trailer composer. And the great thing, obviously, as well, trailer composers, your royalties are slim to none at best, because it's usually buyout or sync placement fees, but the fees up front, if you have a good representative, thank you Vic, can be great. And it was just like, all of a sudden, I found my niche. Now, I found my niche by exploring. Okay, now, I'm not kind of going to suggest to you that, just take 10 years or so, just exploring stuff. But the mistakes I made were, I would occasionally chase the money, brackets advertising, because I wanted to be a full-time composer so badly. It was like anything that kind of dangled a check in my face, I would be like, okay, I'm doing that. Oh, there's another check. Oh yeah, I'm going to do that, regardless of whether I actually wanted to, And library music, and more specifically trailer music, had given me this wonderful focus of my creativity. So that was a big mistake for me to constantly chase the checks rather than focusing on my own sound. And I know why I didn't focus on my own sound, because I was told, I'd go to these networking events with big composers, who were, in the games industry, the film industry, the, ironically, trailer industry that I didn't even notice. And they would all say, guys, stop trying to be Hans Zimmer, which I was at the time, and find your own voice. And I was like, yeah, it's easy for you to say because, you're getting money and stuff. So I spent a few more years trying to be Hans Zimmer, and that didn't really get me anywhere. And, it's a bit of a catch-22 with that type of stuff, because, especially with corporate and things, when you've got these clients who say, we love that piece from Inception, can we have that? But we don't, we've only got like £100. Okay, I'll do Inception again. Obviously I'm not advocating stealing ideas. It was music inspired by Hans Zimmer, there was no thieving going on. And that was my mistake. I focused too much on the money, even though I was getting money from teaching. But that was a fear thing, and that was a big mindset issue that I needed to overcome. The fear of not getting paid, the fear of actually not being able to do this. Because, I'm sure all of you who've got into training music or anything creative have constantly had people say to you, you know what, you're going to struggle for money. It's going to be a real challenge, Actually, you know what? Yeah, it was a challenge, and I did struggle for money, but, no, I'm not, because I persevered, and that's what you need to do too. Anyway, I'm going to get sidetracked. Another mistake, so the first one was focusing on the money. The second mistake, which I've already alluded to, well, I wouldn't say alluded to, actually said, was that I didn't focus on my voice. Now, when I say focus on your voice, I've always hated it when people say that, because it's like, oh, shush, how am I supposed to focus on my voice, What is that? What does that even mean? And that means, do the stuff that gets you excited. And this is the freedom that trailer music gave me. And it's taken me, actually, a few years in the trailer industry to realise this. Trailer music isn't just epic music. Trailer music can be so much. And it can be so broad and cover all sorts of emotions. And that's what you can do. You can enjoy. You get doing whatever you want, You can contact one publisher, one library company and be like, hey guys, I want to pitch this idea of uplifting solo harpsichord for those very, very rare historical drama pieces. And they go, yeah, all right, go for it. Admittedly they might not get you much, or it might land you something ridiculously enormous, you never know. And that's the wonderful thing about it. So to return to my initial proposition, how do you find your niche? Well, put it simply, pretend there's no money, pretend there is no goal. When I say goal, there is obviously a goal, because you want to find your niche, but I mean, nothing that's going to influence your forward momentum. Pretend it's kind of like you're one of those bands who go into the woods for 6 months to record their third album, And I get why they do that, because they don't want outside influence. And it's very hard for us now because we've got connection everywhere. But Pretend you have no outside influence and you've just been sat in a room with these amazing toys, which you have. We all have them. Even if you've just got access to a Logic or no big libraries, no other instruments, because you've got a sampler in all of your workstations. I'm sure you can buy a cheap microphone somewhere and focus on creating those sounds and that stuff that lights those fires. And I think this is going to be a repeated theme in the whole podcast of focusing on the stuff that you enjoy. Because my experience as a mentor to other composers is that when they find the enjoyment in their work quality just increases tenfold. It's wonderful. When they're kind of sat there trying hard to write an epic piece of trailer music, when they're basically just learning the ropes, really. They're learning the structures, and that is very important. But when they're just doing that, and that's their end game, the work they produce is often, mediocre. And I have the same thing, But when they go, you know what, I've been a guitarist all my life, I'm going to take the kind of basic structure stuff that Rich is teaching us, and I'm going to just do a guitar and use guitar to do it. And when they do that, all of a sudden, that sort of self-imposed limitation just inspires this huge creativity in them. And that is where you're going to find your niche. You're going to find that thing where, you know what, I've always loved playing recorder. From the age of a little boy, I used to play recorder and I used to love it. Get that recorder out. See what you can do with it. And that's the great thing. The self-imposed limitations do so much for your creativity and for your output. And that's why, you'll hear me talking about templates, and you'll hear me talking about kind of like a themed album, and you'll hear me talking about certain genres, because the limitations there inspire creativity and a certain level of output. So one little exercise you can do that's going to just sort of help you get through this stage would be just to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and just write down all the things that you enjoy. So I don't mean like I like playing badminton, I mean like within music. So if I was to write that list now on the fly, it would be, you know what, I like sound. I like exploring sound, and this is why sampling is fun for me. I like recording and capturing sound. And I don't mean having a recording studio and things like that. I mean just going up with like a recorder, even this iPhone, and just recording sound, putting it next to a puddle and splashing. It's like there's magic in that sound. So that's one thing. Sound. Yeah, it's pretty broad. Okay, but capturing the magic of sound, for me, that's one of them. Another thing is I enjoy exploring instruments. The design, again, this comes back to sound, but the design of instruments and how they make sound and what sounds they make and how do the players get the sounds they do. And that's the wonderful area of orchestration, which I personally think is the sweet spot, which is just exploring the textures of the instrument. Not necessarily the capabilities as in like virtuosic capabilities, but the capabilities of the sound palette that you can produce. And again, so that way you go. So I've got my sounds, capturing sounds. I've got instruments and the sounds they make. And I like beauty. It sounds really silly when I say that. But I love a beautiful melody. And that's why composers like Arvo Pärt, his writing, where he just focused on very, very simple ideas, but it was often about the beauty. Can a single note communicate a single emotion? And that's the lovely thing about music. Sometimes in a film score, you'll have all this music going on, you're not attached to it, but then a single voice comes in with a single note, and all of a sudden, you're sobbing. Well, maybe you're not. Maybe you're thinking, well, that was a poor choice of instrumentation, but I'm probably sobbing. So they're my three core elements, I think. Capturing sound, exploring instruments and their sounds, and capturing beauty. I'd probably put my fourth one in there that would be kind of extension of capturing beauty, which is just capturing emotion, because me, like many others, I got into music, I say music rather than sound, I think because of an inability to express the emotions I was feeling as a teenager, and without sort of getting out my tiny, very sad violin, talking about that was a huge gift for me. I couldn't express the emotions I was feeling, so I'd go upstairs, press record on my little tape recorder and play the guitar. There was the beginning, there was the seed. So that was the wonderful thing. Once you've sat down and you've done this little list for yourself, you'll go, oh, you know what? I've always enjoyed these things, and they have always been present in everything I've done. I've just never really acknowledged it. So then you go, okay, well, yours might be more specific. You might be like, I like the music of Hans Zimmer, I like Brahms, and I like risers. I don't know why you sound like that, but, in which case, if it's more specific in that nature, then it probably would be a lot easier for you to find your niche. But if you're using broad terminology in the way that I was, you then go, well, how can I capture those things in the work I do? And the answer for me is actually it's pretty broad, and that's why I have a lot of a broad level of output, because that ties in with my fifth passion, and that is patterns. I'm fascinated by the minimalists and system music, not so much the mathematical side of the system music, but just the idea that, what happens if you sort of set this system running and what the music produces. And when I say systems, I don't mean I don't mean a computer system. I mean simple number systems, or like Steve Reich, swinging pendulums, or looping tapes that are a slightly different length of tape, or attaching number systems like the Fibonacci sequence to intervals, or even like the Morse code being translated into rhythms. All these patterns that you see in life, how can they become transferred into music? And that's why I like teaching the way I do, because actually all the music in the world is based on patterns and formulas. And those combinations really meant that training music was my niche. I could capture sound, I could explore instruments, I could capture emotion, I could translate my own mood into sound, I could explore patterns, and I could do all of those things and get paid for it. I mean, that's the dream, right? So I hope this a slightly breathless, rambling British man has helped you a little bit to understand, at least to understand why it is you do what you do. And if I haven't been able to get you to understand that, at least maybe get you to understand, or at least explore what it is you want, and hopefully find out how you can find your niche. Okay, and specifically in training music, it's just a simple case. I'm going to skim over this because I realise I missed a huge chunk of this train of thought, which is how do you find your niche in training music. It goes, you go back to that list and you go, well, okay, well, how does that translate? So if you're a drummer and you've put drums down, then you approach maybe doing some intros to action or crime dramas that have got those kind of like snappy, swaggery drums in them, do do ga do ga do, with claps and all sorts of fun things going on. Or if you're a guitarist, you listen to maybe an artist like Cliff Lynn and go check out the stuff that he does for all sorts of trailers. That's when you go into instrument specific stuff, and that's the wonderful thing. Piano was a big one for me, so obviously I started writing piano works, and so mine naturally kind of fell into drama, which tied in with emotion, and the wonderful thing about piano works is very formulaic, very filled with patterns. And then the other one was for me, which was I like the cello. I got a cello for Christmas. It's probably about 10 years ago now. I couldn't play it, but I just like the sound it made. And then I used that on some trailer stuff because I thought I wanted to include this fun sound. And then all of a sudden I kind of created this sort of voice of my own, which was weird and wonderful cello noise in trailers. So yeah, that's what I'd like you to do. Write that list down, and you can keep it broad like I did, or you can get instrument specific or style specific or genre specific. And remember, don't focus on the money at the end of it. Obviously we do have to make money, but at this stage you're just thinking about the creative outlet. There is a second stage to this where you cross-reference your creative outlet with the possibility of making money, because we all do need to make money at the end of the day, but that's the wonderful thing about trailer music. There's kind of an outlet for all kinds of weird, even if your outlet is just I like the sound of a single piano being sampled. Boom, sampler, there we go. I just like hits, big hits, and that was hits, by the way. Then boom, you've got your sample packs. There's just so many outlets in trailer music, and that is the wonderful, wonderful thing about it. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a rating, give us a review. I say us, I mean me. Let me know what you thought. Obviously you can head on over to the Trailer Music School and join the community, and go to my YouTube channel where I have all sorts of videos about trailer music and other things. And I wish you all the best in finding your niche, guys. And if you want me to dive deeper into this, please let me know, because I could talk about this stuff all day. Probably with some lunch and breakfast and dinner in between, but anyway, all the best, guys. Thank you so much for listening.